Hi everybody, Charles from Novak Migration. Another interesting question from one of our group members. I voluntarily returned from Australia with the help of International Organization of Migration back in 2017 as my student visa was expired and I overstayed there. I was naive and careless to be honest. Long story short, while on my way back from Australia, no one from immigration at the airport handed me any paper stating my ban term of ban, nor was there any stamp on my passport. How would I know if I was banned from coming back and how long was the ban? Yeah, okay. So here's the big question. If you have left Australia while holding the visa or within 28 days after your visa might have expired or get cancelled, or more than 28 days after your visa might get expired or cancelled. And if there was some organization which assisted you with leaving Australia, whether you have got debt for that organization or Australia. But let's say you would have left Australia within 28 days after your visa would get cancelled or expired, then the exclusion period. Yeah, let's say people are saying about 3 years ban. It's not ban as such. We are talking about the exclusion period, 3 years exclusion period, and the thing is that you may still get the visa within these 3 years. And it's under public interest criteria 4013 or 4014, so-called risk factors. And essentially, whether you can apply for another visa and get that visa granted within 3 years of leaving Australia as the unlawful non-citizen without the visa or bridging visa E or bridging visa C. That important. If you would have left Australia on bridging visa C, the risk factor would also apply to you. Okay. Um, so if you would be subject to the exclusion period, then dependent on what sort of the visa you will be applying for. If you would be applying for the permanent visa, most of the permanent visas don't have the PIC 4103 and 4104 included. You can still apply within these 3 years exclusion period and get it granted. If you would have applied for the temporary visa, student visa, visitor visa, 482 visa, for 61, whichever, it does not mean that you cannot get that visa granted at all. Okay, you can still apply for the temporary visa, but then you would have to have the compelling, you would have to argue the compelling circumstances that affect the interest of Australia, or compelling or compassionate or compelling circumstances that affect the interest of Australian citizen, Australian permanent resident, or an eligible New Zealand citizen. So it's not 3 years ban as such. The permanent visa, if you would apply for most of the permanent visas within the 3 years period of the exclusion period, you can still get the visa. With the temporary one, if you would have an argument about compelling or compassionate circumstances affecting Australia or Australian citizen permanent resident, you may still get the visa granted. It's not about compelling circumstances affecting you. It must be Australia, Australian citizen, or Australian permanent resident, or eligible New Zealand citizen. And yes, they don't put any information in your passport. Essentially, you need to talk to the professional and you need to know the facts. You need to know whether your visa was cancelled, whether your visa whether your visa expired, whether you have left Australia within 28 days after the expiry on cancellation date. And usually it's a good idea if your visa expired and you are leaving Australia, it's a good idea to apply for the bridging visa E based on the fact that you have made arrangements or you're making arrangements to leave Australia. Because then in the PVE they will just let you on the plane and off you go. If your visa will expire and then you will be leaving Australia, then very likely they will take you on the airport to the room without the knobs and will be asking why you overstayed and so on and so on. It might be a bit unpleasant, okay? And 28 days after expiry date, that's very, very, very important. Actually, there are the ways that you can extend these 28 days. If you would apply for a bridging visa E, potentially you may, get it over these 28 days. But yeah, here is the question. If it was less than 28 days, more than 28 days, whether your visa actually was cancelled or expired, and whether you still have got debt to Australia because somebody must have paid for the flight, and if you paid it back, so you might be outside of the exclusion period. But if you still have got debt for Australia or for some Australian organization, that could prevent you from getting the visa. It's not said that after the 3 years it's forgotten and you will certainly get the visa. The exclusion period is over, but there is still red flag that you were not in Australia, and that will still be taken into consideration when you will be applying for the new visa, why you want to come to Australia. If you want to know what is the exclusion period, whether it applied to you, 17 is 23, so it's more than 3 years, so the exclusion period wouldn't apply to you. But yeah, have a chat with the migration agent, take the consultation, and then you will get the explanation. And yes, on the airport, they will not tell you what is the story. If they will be canceling your visa, then a different story on the airport, and it's happening. Then they would have to hand you the decision why they are canceling. But if you would, leave while you overstayed, well, different story. So thank you very much. Take care.